Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set, cocked, locked? Here we go. Your dial set correctly to USA Prepares. Thank you for being in class with us today. John is engineering the broadcast in Minnesota at GCN. I'm Vincent Finelli, and today it ought to be quite an interesting broadcast for many, many reasons. We're going to do something that we haven't done before. Stephen Heuer is with us. Stephen Heuer of Synergistic Nutrition, SGN80.com. Welcome, Stephen.
Good morning, Vincent.
Hey, thank you for being with us. And then Tracie Cesar is with us. Tracie Cesar is a USA Prepares instructor. Her husband, Dr. Cesar, is a DO. Both have been at the Get Prepared Expo, as well as Stephen Heuer. And we're going to be talking about something that has happened to Tracie Cesar, and we're going to get Stephen Heuer's advice, counsel, and expertise on that. Welcome, Tracie Cesar.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Morning, Tracie.
Tracie, you're also a nurse.
Yes, I am. Well, I placed my license on inactive because I work with docs, so I still have one if I pay money to the state. You know what I'm saying?
I do. So, Tracie Cesar, would you like to start with what has happened to you? You've been through quite an experience, quite an ordeal.
I sure have.
Would you like to share that with
on December 1st,
with our class?
I was diagnosed with breast cancer. Actually, my birthday, which is November 22nd, I knew there was some changes that I needed to be evaluated for. You know, something was going on. And saw my family practice doctor, who I've been friends with for 20-plus years and trust explicitly because he's not a medicine pusher, you know. He delivered all my babies, and he said, yeah, we have a issue. And, of course, they scheduled me for a mammogram, and it turned out that I had stage 2B carcinoma in my left breast. It was not at the time after I had the biopsy. It wasn't in my lymph nodes. And then I chose to, I know better than all of this, by the way. So I think what I want to tell you first off is that fear is a very large motivating factor to make some really, really, really poor choices. They wanted me, of course, instantly to go to see an oncologist, and I went to the closest one, okay, because I don't want to drive, and I didn't know what they were going to say, and I just, you know, I was afraid. My family was afraid. My best friend was in the room, and everyone was pretty much freaked out, you know. And then, long story short, he recommended that I have 6 treatments every 21 days of chemotherapy called ACT. The A part of the chemotherapy is absolutely, they literally call it the red devil. When they're hooking you up to it, it's called the red devil. So I proceeded to, I needed surgery, okay? The surgeon wanted to have surgery in January. I was scheduled for surgery, but then the oncologist said, no, we need to do the chemotherapy first, shrink the tumor, get it away from my pectoral muscle, and then have the surgery. Well, the whole time my sixth sense, or whatever you want to call anything, I guess my knowledge, my, you know, I hit the pause button, in other words. I had 2 rounds of chemotherapy. I came home and, in the meantime, had ordered a DVD set called thetruthaboutcancer.org. It's from thetruthaboutcancer.org. You get it free in your email so you can see these videos that this guy went all over the world interviewing different naturopaths and doctors, DOs, MDs, getting information about cancer, the treatment of cancer, what other people have been through, how they've been cured without chemotherapy and radiation, so forth. So I had my second round of chemotherapy, and then I lost my cool. It was a Saturday morning. I watched the first part of the DVD, and I had to turn it off, and I haven't even watched the rest of it since then because I became so infuriated with just a short amount of information that was reconfirmed to me. This isn't stuff that I didn't know. It's things that somehow went into the ethers because they scared the tar out of me, you know? So then what I did that morning was I emailed Dr. Shealy and I said, listen, I've been diagnosed with breast cancer. I think they're trying to kill me. Can you please call me at the house? So he immediately called me, and this was a Saturday morning. We talked a little bit. I told him why I was frustrated, that I was losing my temper, that I'm not doing not one more thing, they say, until I see him, talk to him, because I trust him. So it's just that simple. So he said, Tracie, just come in on Monday. We'll sit down and talk. I said, okay. So I went to see him, and he agreed with me, no more chemotherapy. I started high doses of IV vitamin C in a Myers cocktail multiple times a week, and got on some supplements. I'm also taking apricot, the bitter root apricot seed supplement. And then I went ahead and scheduled my surgery. Well, when I finally got the surgery, my tumor had grown twice as big. So I had 2 rounds of chemotherapy that ruined my veins, made my hair fall out, made me gain 50 pounds. I felt like total crap. And by the way, that's all my own responsibility, okay? I knew better. I did it out of fear, which will never happen again. What I would recommend people to do is just hit the pause button, number 1. Number 2, get multiple opinions. Don't just go to one provider and take what they say as, you know, this is what's going to save your life, etc. And Dr. Shealy said the only oncologist he trusted was in Bolivar. And I said, okay, well, I'll go see him. And so I did, and that's who my oncologist is now. And he and I still butt heads to a degree, you know. He wanted me to have some more surgery and radiation, and I'm not doing either one of those things. I do not fear death. Death is not, it's not something I fear, okay? I think they use that, of course, because we're going to miss the people that we love, you know, as a motivating factor to make some really bad choices. And since then, let's see, I had the surgery. I've had multiple IV therapies. I've been to Heuer. I'm taking the supplements. So I think that when you put all of those things together, my PET scan came back clean. Now, of course, PET scans can't detect minuscule cancer cells. So that's neither a here nor there thing. I don't have large masses of cancer anywhere in my body. So I'm just believing that with the help of Stephen and Dr. Shealy and you, thank you very much for having me on and allowing me to tell my story, and maybe encourage people, you know, to take a step back and breathe a little bit and not just go with the first recommendation. Find a naturopath. Talk to your friends, you know. I've had friends that have had this, and of course, you know, there's a large cure rate with chemo and radiation and surgical treatment in the breast cancer community. But my question is, I'm 46 years old, so when I'm 56 years old or 66 years old, what is going to happen to me because of what I put in my body, you know, allowed to be put in my body? And I'm not willing to deal with those consequences. So Anyway, that's my short story. Short as I can make it.
Tracie Cesar, thank you so much. And, Stephen, what happened was Tracie called me on the weekend. And I wasn't available to take the call, and I immediately called her back, and she told me this story. And the first thing I thought of was you and Dr. Shealy. And I said, we need to get you in touch with Stephen Heuer. And we talked some more, and both of you agreed to do this on the air. Class, this is unrehearsed. This is the first time Stephen Heuer is hearing about this. And Stephen Hewer's had cancer, and he has treated himself. And Stephen Hewer's come up with some brilliant suggestions for me, and I'm getting better. So naturally, I suggested Stephen Heuer. Stephen, what are your thoughts so far?
Well, I'm sorry, Tracie, that you went through what you went through in terms of, learning through the school of hard knocks. And you're right that, whenever fear is a motivating factor, I myself have experienced that so many times when whatever the decision was at hand, I made the wrong decision because fear was my motivating factor. So you're right. Anybody out there who gets that diagnosis that tends to put people in terror and panic because they think they're going to die, because it's so common that, when you work with doctors that, you don't get cured, you end up dying, and that people pause because they're not going to die right away. They have plenty of time and come from a place of peace, like you said, first trusting that, don't get rid of the fear of death, and then, start approaching the subject from a rational, calm place where you can actually gather the information that's out there and, find out that, there's a huge track record of tens of thousands of people that have cured their cancer and remained free of cancer for decades on end using natural methods. Myself, I also, I've had a thyroid issue that developed in 2016 that resulted in giving me very high testosterone and estrogen levels that, tumor cells go off in the body naturally all the time, and if you've got a growth factor that's going to fuel the growth of the tumor cells faster than your immune system can keep up with it, which was my case, I also developed both breast and prostate cancer. And it came back 3 times. So the first time I used B17 and a few other things, and it went away within a week. And then the next time it came back, I was at a clinic in Mexico and did some immune shots, and it went away in a week. And the third time I'll tell you about on the other side of the break.
Okay. Stephen Hewer's with us. Tracie Cesar's with us. We're talking about Tracie's condition. She had cancer, and we're talking about what you can do should this happen to you. Take a page out of our book. We'll be right back. Class 2 USA Prepares Instructors are with us today. Nurse Tracie Cesar, diagnosed with cancer, and Stephen Heuer of Synergistic Nutrition, SGN80.com. Stephen, you were saying that you did 3 things. 1, B17 treatment. 2, you went to a clinic in Mexico. By the way, was that Dr. Dunsbach or Dr. Patrick Vickers, who was a USA Prepares instructor?
No, actually it was a doctor that specialized in stem cell therapy, and used to work out of L.A., was driven out of the state, and went to retire in Mexico, but instead had so many patients that wanted him to continue his stem cell therapy that he opened up a clinic. And so I went there for stem cell therapy for my thyroid to try and help it heal, and I didn't, go there for the cancer issue. But they said they had some immune serum from Germany that was very expensive. Each shot was $1,000, and he thought 6 rounds would help me. So I did 6 shots, one a day for 6 days, and in a week it was gone, the lump in the breast. But then I come back home, and it came back. The lump in the breast came back, both breasts, and, just continued to have the cancer. So the third time I did a little more research, and I remembered learning from a fellow practitioner years earlier and hearing another practitioner on a radio interview talk about the merits of fermented wheat germ material called Avamar. So I got this product and used it, and basically it was developed by a Hungarian scientist, a doctor, what's his name, Mate Hajvigi. So this man in 1990 basically concluded his research on animals, I guess in humans, with the use of fermented wheat germ and the chemicals produced for fermenting the wheat germ called benzoquinones and then all the properties of the fermented wheat germ material and how it affects the body's immune system and how it helps the body overcome cancer. So I used that product, and again, in a week, the breast lumps were gone, and test results showed that I'm clear, and I've never had it come back. So this particular substance I consider to be the granddaddy of all therapies that have been discovered to date, of all the natural immune support therapies that are out there. This one sort of like takes the cake. And I take it every so often just to keep my immune system, in that optimized state of being able to get rid of every last tumor cell that may be going off in the body. And as Tracie said earlier, you can do these scans, but if the tumor cells are still in their infancy stage of development such that they are not big enough to be seen by a scan, then, you can still have the tumor growing in your body and have spent that money on an expensive test that really didn't, help you see whether or not you had active tumor growth. So this is the kind of a product that you could take on a regular basis to sort of like keep the immune system strong enough to get rid of every last tumor cell. And so, there's many other components to, acquiring cancer. And so I'd like to actually talk about that for a second. Otto Warburg back in the 1930s was nominated and won the Nobel Prize for defining how cells breathe or respirate. And then he also was nominated for the Nobel Prize for discovering how tumor cells are created. And what he proved in his experiments was that he could lower the oxygen level of healthy cells by 35% for 15 minutes, and if it was 15 minutes or longer, that cell would now convert over to a tumor cell. If it was under 15 minutes, he was actually the cell could revert back to a normal cell. But if it was beyond a certain point of time, the cell that wants to survive, it has to convert over to making energy in the absence of oxygen, is a tumor cell. And so this is one common phenomenon that occurs in a body that has toxins of all kinds, has a reduced body pH being acidic instead of alkaline. We know that alkaline pH has a much higher oxygen level than an acid pH, and acid pH has a much lower oxygen level. And so in a chronically acidic body with toxins, heavy metals, chemical drug deposits, cooked food toxins, you end up having an environment where cells will convert over automatically to tumor cells. And so that's one aspect of, understanding why a tumor cell would occur in a body that previously didn't have it. And, we also have the microbiome. The 70% of the human digestive tract represents the human immune system. And many people have been eating foods injurious to the gut, be it gluten, be it casein. It could be you've eaten these foods for 10, 20, 30 years and never had seemingly any symptoms, but then all of a sudden you've got reactions to different foods, and you've compromised your immune system because these inflammatory foods, the casein, the sugar, the gluten, have created holes in your gut that are now allowing undigested food particles in, and now you've got a weakened immune system that's not going to work correctly to defend you from tumor cells. So you've got to have a healthy gut, you've got to have a healthy pH, and you have to know how to detoxify the body of all those toxins that are in the system by raising glutathione levels, and that's another topic we can hit on the other side of the break.
Okay. Tracie Cesar, Stephen Heuer, I'm Dane Finelli. We're talking about cancer. We're talking about two people who have had it and what they've done. Stephen, please continue, and then I'd love to hear what Tracie's thoughts are.
Yeah, so basically I was saying that you have to detoxify the body by raising glutathione. So I recommend people take this raw whey protein powder that we work with. It's been Tesla Energy enhanced because we've had dozens and dozens of people report fantastic detoxification results while taking it, and even a hair test analysis that proved a lowering of mercury, lead, and arsenic to almost non-detectable in 2 months, when previously, after 5 hair tests over 2 years, the hair test always showed high levels of mercury, lead, and arsenic. So then there's the dietary component. So I have a whole report that I've written, Cancer Report, Freedom from Cancer for everyone, that goes into the dietary aspects. You've got your choice there. I like to get people on an all-raw diet. Some people embrace that. I just had a gentleman that adhered to this who had third-stage bone cancer and got on the supplements in the diet. His cancer went away very quickly. He's in remission now, and not only that, he has a tremendous amount of strength and muscle growth that he's just quite pleased at age 60, the transformation of his body. If people don't want to go to that all-raw diet, they have to be aware that cooked animal proteins, except for fish, so your land animals, your poultry and your red meats and pork and stuff, they all dramatically contribute to feeding the cancer. So there was a famous researcher named Gunther Enderlein that did 60 years of dark field blood analysis that observed that when people with cancer continued to eat animal proteins, that there was this upward development of the protein that causes cancer growth in the body. So fish is okay when you've got cancer if you're going to do cooked stuff, but don't eat cooked animal proteins because they seem to feed the cancer. And that's why so many people's programs that go towards trying to cure cancer is a vegetarian approach. And then, restoring an alkaline pH, restoring your essential fatty acids. Dr. Joanna Budwig had a 90% success rate curing cancer, giving people fresh-pressed flaxseed oil with cottage cheese. She used the cottage cheese because there was a little bit of the sulfur amino acid cysteine in it, which helped to emulsify the oils and make them more absorbable. These oils actually are electron-rich, so they actually become a part of the cell membrane, and the cell membrane is now restored in its ability to use oxygen. So one of the means by which cells absorb oxygen is enough unoxidized omega-3 and omega-6 in the cell wall, and the fresh-pressed flax oil provides that, except that I don't recommend you mix it with cottage cheese because cottage cheese is a known, casein is a known inflammatory allergen-producing protein, and it's better to use our whey, which is much higher in the cysteine that helps with the glutathione production and the emulsification of the oil. Get people on a good iodine supplement with both iodine and iodide because you want iodine for the breast and the prostate, which protects them from the cancer, and the iodide works for supporting a healthy thyroid function. When people are sick and they can't digest protein well, they have cancer, they go into cachexia, which is the body self-digesting its own tissues to feed the cancer cells, and so people become emaciated, and more people die from that than they do the actual cancer. So I get people on free-form amino acids that support the muscle tissue repair, the energy and strength of the body, the immune system, blood sugar regulation, all that stuff. And then there's other things that she mentioned. Tracie mentioned B17. If you mix B17 in water with, like, if it's 8 ounces of water and you have 500 milligrams of B17 in that water, and you mix that with a teaspoon of DMSO, that's going to cause the B17 to reach all the tissues much more thoroughly, because normally B17 won't reach the brain or the bone because it's too large of a molecule to reach those tissues, but you overcome that when you add DMSO, which is a natural solvent derived from wood pulp, and DMSO also has anti-cancer properties in and of itself, and people are using it in the cancer clinics in Mexico extensively to help with overcoming cancer. And intermittent fasting is fantastic. I recommend people fast either one day a week for 24 to 36 hours or every other day for 16 hours because you want your body to have time to go into autophagy, the process whereby the body self-digests the senescent, unhealthy cells in the body, and it actually then euthans the healthy cells to give them more mitochondria and healthy organelles so that the cells are more energetic and youthful. And that's super, super helpful to the process of overcoming any disease, including cancer. You can speed up detoxification of toxins by doing ionic foot baths, by using a sauna, coffee enemas. These are all things that contribute. But as I said earlier, it's common that cancer comes back because there's this thing called the cancer stem cell. So cancer stem cell is sort of like the seed from which the tumors grow. And even when you do chemotherapy, which can successfully kill the tumor cells, it doesn't actually kill the cancer stem cell. It's immune to that. It has special detoxification pumps that enable it to detoxify the chemo so quickly that it doesn't kill it. So it's very common that people get cancer, comes back because they never got rid of the cancer stem cell and they never addressed the cause, the terrain of the body and the toxins that enabled the cancer to occur. And so if they take a broccoli sprout extract product, which is very high in sulforaphane, they're taking a substance which is known to lower the cancer stem cell presence. And so basically there's a lot of things you can do that are in this report. It's pretty extensive, and I think you wanted to hear from Tracie, too, on this, so I'll hand it over to her then.
Thank you. That's all awesome information, and I'll be talking to you, Stephen.
Okay.
I love knowledge is power, and unfortunately, you're right. I learned in the school of hard knocks because I'm a Sagittarian, so that's the only way I learn is hard knocks. One thing I wanted to bring up is that there was an article in the CDC where they admitted, it's no longer on their website, by the way, but it's embedded, and I have it, that they admitted that they infected, it was over 60 million people with the polio virus, cancer in polio vaccinations. And of course, viruses, we know things that can treat them, but the medical community doesn't know how that's connected. Do you understand what I'm saying? So, anyways, they've redacted that from their website, ironically or not. So that what I'm saying is that many, many, many people, it's spread from generation to generation in the stem cells because of that, vaccinations that they've had generations before any of us were born. And Vinny knows I've been on the show before about vaccinations, and I absolutely despise them. They make me angry. It makes me angry that people can't see through what's going on because, for instance, I'm going to give you an example. Babies are born every day and in hospitals, and they're given a vitamin K shot because they don't want them to, quote-unquote, bleed to death. Well, the question I have that people should ask themselves is, in the 1800s, when there was no vitamin K shot, did the babies bleed to death?
Exactly.
And anyways, that's another subject for a different day, but I want to get back to the alkaline deal of our bodies also because there's a catch-22 that some are not aware of. You probably are, Stephen, but my husband, Doc, he drank a lot of water, so he got a bottle that turns the water into alkaline water, and was drinking it all the time. Well, it threw him into, he had a low potassium level, which, of course, affects your heart. So what I'm saying is that the electrolytes, you got to pay attention to your electrolytes when you're putting your body into an alkaline state, because specifically potassium is needed for your heart to operate correctly, which he unfortunately found out the hard way. I think it throws him, what is it, ketoacidosis? Is that what happened? Hypokalemia, sorry.
Hypokalemia is when you've got the heart deficiency or too much potassium or, too little, yeah.
Right, and so what happened was, because of it's a catch-22, so throwing our bodies into the alkaline state throws off the electrolytes, and then it becomes a vicious cycle to rebalance that. And I'm not even intelligent enough to speak on it. I'll just admit it, I just experienced it, so I want to make sure that people are aware of you've got to balance your electrolytes in the alkaline state.
Well, it's actually different than what you're understanding there. So when you consume a water that is, devoid of these electrolytic minerals, the potassium, sodium, magnesium, calcium, chloride, when they're not present in the water and you've made this ionized water, you're doing two things. You're imbalancing your body, your pH-wise, because alkaline water, contrary to what people think, is not the way the body alkalizes itself. Nowhere in nature does alkaline water exist. The purpose of water is to hydrate and to provide a means by which the body can get extra hydrogen and oxygen. So there's two different water systems that I promote in this particular report that I talked about earlier, where one of them is called the Electron 5 distiller that distills the water into a structure where the water bond angle has widened. So if you just imagine the shape of a V or a wishbone, normally water bond angle is 104 degrees. After going through this specific distillation process, it widens to 114 degrees. That particular widening seems to enable the water to not only carry more energy, 3,000% more energy than regular water, but also enable the body to break down water into hydrogen and oxygen. And so that hydrogen works as an electron donor, and the oxygen works as an antifungal, antiviral, anti-anaerobic gas that helps the body get back to a healthy physiological state, because the tissues have to have physiological water for them to operate correctly. And physiological water is water that's long, single-file strands of water molecules. So contrary to what a lot of people have taught, that water has to have a hexagonal structure, this is not true. Water will become a hexagonal structure when you freeze it into a snowflake, but it goes back to an unorganized state once you thaw it. So water from like vegetable juices and fresh fruit juices is physiological water, long single-file strands of water molecules, because water can only go into the cell one molecule at a time. And there's only one pore there's only a pore on the surface of the cell called the aquaporine. That's the space through which the water goes, one molecule at a time. So if they're long single-file strands, then you end up getting, millions to billions of molecules absorbed rather readily and easily, and you have physiological water. If you don't drink physiological water, if you drink alkaline water or any of these other waters, you're drinking a water whereby your body has to expend energy. Your body, your DNA literally emits 1,200 nanometers of light, and that energy, and when you're young, is high enough to structure water into these long single-file strands so that it hydrates you, and it's physiological water. But when you're older, sick, compromised, toxic, whatever, then your vitality is lowered, and you're not going to structure water into this physiological state, so you end up with unorganized water in your tissues that enables your cells to not function correctly. Alkalization should be done through alkaline vegetable juices, alkaline mineral supplements, and through restoring health to your liver, kidneys, and your lungs, which are what regulate your pH in your body.
Okay, we'll be right back with Stephen Heuer.
Yeah.
Class, if you're riveted by this information that you're hearing and you'd like to contact Stephen Heuer's organization, 888-988-3325. 888-988-3325. Or you can go to the website, SGN, as in Synergistic Nutrition, SGN80, SGN80.com. And you can arrange for a consultation with Stephen Heuer by calling 888-988-3325, or, of course, visit the website. We've got a couple minutes left. Stephen, you want to continue? Then I'd like to ask Tracie what her thoughts are about what she just heard.
Okay, so one of the things I wanted to conclude on was just her point and her concern about this deficiency of potassium that causes the heart to go into arrhythmia or have malfunctions. And so when you have a diluted water product without those minerals in it, or you're drinking water that's diluting the amount of potassium in your body, that's when you go into this hypokalemia. It doesn't have to be alkaline water. It could be any water. My brother went through it when he was in prison, and he was drinking a lot of water in the morning, and all of a sudden he had, he passed out and had this, deficiency of potassium from an excess of just water consumption in any one time window. So one of the things that's in my protocol is this product called Capra Mineral Whey. It's a special whey product where they put it through a special process to remove the protein, and it's just 20 food-derived minerals in this Capra Mineral Whey from goat's whey, and it's got all the electrolytic minerals, calcium, magnesium, sodium, potassium, and chloride. And I can tell you from experience, in the days when I used to jog, my normal jogging pattern was 2 miles at a time, but if I took this prior to my jog, 45 minutes prior to my jog, with some Barley Max, which is a green juice powder, my heart rate would go down so low during my jog that I could go 4 miles and feel just fantastic. So your heart muscle will work a lot less, making any activity easier, your muscles work easier when you have all these electrolytic minerals in a food form, so they're truly physiologically absorbed. And it's just phenomenal, the benefits of that one product in a day-to-day life, whether or not you've got cancer or not.
Okay, Stephen, a quick question. You mentioned water in vegetable juices, physiological water. What vegetable juices do you recommend?
So I recommend a person do higher percentage, like 80%, 70% celery, 10, 20% carrot, and then 2 to 3 ounces of broccoli juice to that mix, because broccoli juice is full of the sulforaphane, and people have gotten rid of their breast cancer just doing broccoli juice. So a little bit of broccoli juice with the little bit of carrot and mostly celery, and then that would be a really excellent way to get high amounts of physiological water, anti-cancer chemicals, alkalinizing minerals, the physiological water is a big, big deal, because just drinking physiological water has made cancer recede or recover quicker. There's studies on the MRET device that proves that. It's another device that I recommend in the report if people can't get the Electron 5 distiller. There's this magnetic resonance effect technology water structuring device that puts water into these long single-file strands so that it truly hydrates you. And water, when it's in physiological form, actually supports your body's ability to fold proteins. So your liver and your cells make proteins, but the proteins don't work until they fold into the correct structure, and that folding is orchestrated by physiological water.
And how do you make broccoli juice? Are you talking about putting it in a blender, a juicer, or are you talking about cooking broccoli and keeping the water?
I'm glad you asked that, because a lot of people, when I ask them if they have a juicer, they say yes, and then I ask them further, are you blending the vegetables up and calling that juice? And they say yes. I said, no, that's a pureed vegetable. I'm talking about a juicer that separates the pulp from the juice or the liquid, and the best one is the Green Star Elite is the best one that will, keep the heat and the friction and the oxidation down to the lowest. And so that's separating the pulp from the water. And no, never ever cooking it, because you destroy too much of the elements and probably the structuring of the water that's in the vegetable. So you're not going to get much benefit if you do that. And the Gershon Therapy Center in Mexico, their protocol for helping people cure cancer is 13 cups of fresh vegetable juice a day, 1 cup every hour.
Tracie, very quickly, we only have 45 seconds. Any thoughts, comments, concerns?
Well, I'm really excited because I have 4 pages of notes. So I'll be doing research and I'll be talking to Stephen. And also I wanted to add one real fast thing is that stress causes your immune system to deplete. I was under severe stress, so you have to get that under control in order not for the cancer to spread further, So it's a mental thing also.
Yeah, it's actually, if you have enough energy. Yeah, if you have enough energy, the stress goes away, and that's one of the things a good supplement program does.
Thanks, Stephen.
Thank you, Tracie. Thanks, Vincent.
Thank you both. Everyone all set? Cocked? Locked? Here we go, hour number 2 of USA Prepares. For those of you who are new to the class, there are well over 200 of us here at usaprepares.com. And we are experts in various areas. We are innovators, dentists, medical doctors, farmers, physicists, researchers, broadcasters, CEOs, surgeons, engineers, inventors. And what happens is students rise to become instructors. And how do you do that? Well, students will call in and they will express their opinions, ask their questions, and some decide that they want to contribute. They want to add to the content of the broadcast classroom. USA Prepares. Robert Stewart is your newest instructor from Kansas. He's got a degree in business administration, and he wants to teach us about forming a not-for-profit corporation. Why? Because he's heard Rich Scheben and me discussing this many, many times and how we can get it done. So, for example, let's say we want to have a property that we can make available to a lot of our students. How would we do that? How do we encourage that? How do we protect it? How do we keep it affordable? How do we do all that? And what happens if a bad egg slips in and we want to not have bad eggs? What do we do about all that? Well, Robert Stewart's going to teach us that during this hour. Welcome, Robert.
Good morning. Thanks for having me on.
Well, thank you. Thank you for joining the faculty of USA Prepares. So, what is it? Is it the 501c3? Is it a some other corporation that would be not-for-profit? I mean, there are a bunch of not-for-profit type configurations in federal law of the United States, according to 26 U.S.C. And like 29 different types of not-for-profit organizations that are exempt from some federal income taxes, and some states even honor this. So, heck, you can be exempt state and federally. Is that correct? Or am I confused?
Oh, well, Vincent, it's a complicated business, and this sort of information in a lot of ways is purposely held from us. Even in business school, you have to look deeper into the law text regarding business, and Uniform Code of Commercial Commerce really governs everything. And it's interesting, the corporation, just the aspect of it, incorporating something, is a foreign concept to people because they're not taught to think that way, and they don't know history, and they don't know where it comes from. You have instructors. You mentioned Rick Scheben. You have Dr. Miller. He talked about maritime law yesterday. And it's a really good example of kind of explaining a corporation to somebody, because the maritime aspect is dealing with ships. And a ship back then would often be constructed in a very robust manner. The trips were very long. It was very dangerous, and oftentimes you would lose captains and crew and all sorts of things, but the ship would remain. So the vessel, the ship, became incorporated, and it was a certain organization. Then they would incorporate, or a corporation would own a bunch of shipping or a bunch of ships. So that's really, it does, there is the maritime law aspect of it. It's absolutely true. I refer to it as the Babylonian corporate fiction, and that can mean a lot to somebody or nothing at all, depending on who you are. As far as did it come from Babylon, well, at least the sophisticated form of it did, in my opinion. And so that's really what we're dealing with. And we're dealing with what underpins our entire legal system, really. It's the contract. It's the corporation. Guineith Isaacs often talks about this. She has a good handle on it. And what I want to do is try to get a solution. I mean, I hate to utilize their system. I hate to form a corporate entity, and, you know, whether it's like self-reinforcing, like the same, maybe where the same problems come from with a lot of the issues we have. At the same time, there are both benefits and protections available to the members of that nonprofit incorporated structure. And it's just that simple. There are reasons to do it, and if you do it well, it can be very successful. And if you have, but what does that depend on? Well, that's, you know, ultimately it's just the people involved. And if you have a lot of USA prepared instructors that are more experts than I am and have taken more deep dives into certain aspects of making this function, if you could utilize all that resource and you could actually get people together in a location who, you know, even if you weren't working on the corporation that day, Vincent, you know that other people would be, and you don't even have to ask them about it. You would have interested parties and members working for that. And I think if, like you say, trapping a piece of land into a corporate structure, like if you take hundreds of acres and you make it into a nonprofit structure or a nonprofit held that area, you essentially alleviate all the costs associated with property taxes and a lot of other issues associated with that. So the taxation part of it, I think a lot of people do understand. You talk about forming a business, which can kind of be difficult for people to understand on its own, and it's actually much more simple. You don't have to actually incorporate. You just have to found the idea that you're going to have this business, and you've explained this better than me, Vince, but you know that model. The nonprofit model, the nonprofit incorporated 501c3, tax exempt, can take donations. That is a very high level of structure. It's very difficult to achieve. You really probably do need a Missouri attorney if you were going to do it in Missouri. If you wanted every I dotted and T crossed and not have to reapply and your 1023 form, if you've ever taken a look at a 1023, you probably don't want to fill that out more than once. But like I said, Vince, if you have instructors involved and enough people, you could really, because, I mean, with an incorporation, you have to have a group of people. It's not like just an LLC or a partnership or a sole proprietorship. You actually have to have a group of people. You have to have meetings. You have to have minutes. You have members of that corporation who elect a board, and then that board governs the corporation, and you have a chairman of the board. I think of that as, Shealy or you or somebody who, is going to want to deal with that sort of level and be on site. But that's really what the problem with it, and also the benefit of it is it does take an enormous amount of organization and multiple interested parties. And it does matter who's interested, too. If you have Dr. Shealy sign on as an incorporator, well, then that's different than not having a long-term, medical doctor signing on with you, or someone like him in that area, you see. So it is about who's involved, and then comes the, all the benefits that can be derived and all the protections that could be derived for the member's sake, and then the idea of what can we provide the potential student in terms of the value proposition to them, a true charitable idea where you say, okay, you can come and exist on this space, and as far as how big the space is, that's a detail that I question in my mind a lot, but imagine it's a couple acres, 5 acres, whatever. You can come and exist on this space and build this like, well, basically what Rich Scheben has done. And I think of Guineith, and I know that you're solar independent, Vincent. They can come and exist on this space, and after they have been accepted, they've done a pre-test to make sure they know the basics, and they've submitted a plan, and this is a qualified candidate. Vincent, you've dealt with renters, right? So ultimately it's down to human psychology. It's down to the spirit, the attitude, what that person is like. If you give them a lawnmower, do they mow the yard or do they sell it? So it's one of those things, Vince. If you find a good candidate, though, and you give them the skills and the knowledge and the land to do it on, the demonstration value of that. I mean, if you could take normal people and they could build an enclosed, bio-intensive permaculture polyphase system and it worked, I mean, it's not like Rich Scheben doing it or you doing it or even someone like me who is not at your level, or I aspire to be there. I want to be like Rich Scheben, if you want to know what I want to do. But getting one of us to do something like that is one thing, because Rich Scheben's going to do it no matter what, right? But getting just normal people to be able to learn and do this and get off the grid and end all their expenses through production, and not all their expenses, obviously, but just the opportunity to demonstrate this fact would the value in it would become intrinsic, and it would be at some point, just like any corporation, you're going to not want to manage it anymore, Vince. You're going to want to retire from it or whatever, and it's going to go on without you, or at least you hope. And that would be the idea, is that if you really had good students, like you were talking about Rising, it could be just a self-nurturing type of entity that then could be exported to other places, or even attached to, like the suburb of a large city, where if you had let's say they would be larger lots, but they would be, they would be you could export the model if you were able to demonstrate it. And I think that's where so much value could come in with the inputs that USA Prepares can bring, and just like I talked about in our email, bringing Guineith Isaacs over, and that might not be what she wants to do or what you want to do or anything like that, but it is about that sort of thing. If you have an Australian lady that comes over to teach these classes on self-sufficiency, like the marketing and the value proposition to students and the idea of the school, whatever its name would be, it is all about that. We have Dr. Shealy, and then we have, Guineith with her accent and everything. Like, there's a value to that. And so that's kind of my dream, is that you guys put that together, and I could see it someday. But, yeah, I can go on and on.
Well, hold that thought, Robert. We'll be right back. We're talking about expanding USA Prepares on the physical level, where many of you can be on site. We'll be right back. Robert Stewart's with us, and you mentioned Rich Scheben. Rich Scheben has been to the farm, and Rich Scheben and I talk quite often, and he wants to expand what we do to involve people who are really interested in becoming self-sufficient. He wants to know why there are so many billionaires who just don't use their money wisely. He thinks that, boy, wouldn't it be amazing if they would just contribute a speck of what they have, what they've accumulated, to encourage people and to teach people how to be self-sufficient, how to be of the preparedness mind, how to fall away from the herd that doesn't pay attention to what's really going on, and how necessary it is to prepare for the future. And he's mentioned to me several times, and we've talked about this off the air, we have it right here at the farm. We have everything it takes to teach. We've got the instructors. We've got the farm. We have the implements. We have off-grid, water, food, animals. We have the knowledge. We can do it. We can do it. We just need to take the next step, and that's what Rick Scheben wants us to do. He literally wants us to get land and invite people who really want to participate, who really want to be productive. I'm not talking about someone who says, well, I don't know, I might be interested, I don't know, maybe not, I don't know. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about someone who's passionate. We're talking about people who really want to thrive and survive and build and make life better for everyone, who want to contribute but be an owner at the same time, people who want to invent and share with the village. We'll call it the village. And the interesting thing is, Robert Stewart, it's starting to happen in a small way. I got a call from one of our class. He listens to us on republicbroadcasting.org, and that's owned by John Statmiller. John Statmiller is kind, and so kind that he picks up this broadcast with commercials in its entirety and replays it with my permission and the permission of Ted Anderson, who owns GCN. We all agree, and John Statmiller plays it on his network, Republic Broadcasting. We'll call it tape delayed, and it's awesome. We're the only broadcast I know of that has that kind of an environment where it's on two separate networks. It never happens, but yet, there's the John Statmillers, there's the John Regans. I mean, the list goes on and on and on with our instructors. Imagine us all working together where you can participate in person, have a piece of land next to other instructors. And what we have is not the next farm across the road, but the farm adjoining that is one of our class members. And between that farm and our farm is a USA Prepares instructor. Now there's 3 of us in a row. That can expand. And I think that's sort of what you're talking about, isn't it, Robert Stewart?
Yes, Vincent. I'm talking about interested parties such as yourself and Rich Scheben being involved in something, and others that have resources and knowledge and capacity. And that's what it takes to form something like this. It's not just you deciding to have a business. I couldn't start a nonprofit by myself. I guess maybe I could do some form of it, but not a nonprofit corporation because when you do that, it's just different. It's a different level, and it's saying to anyone who knows what it is that you're serious. I mean, you can take money, you can compete for tax dollars with the U.S. government. Meaning that if someone gives you their donation, that counts as they paid their taxes. That's a high level of authorization in terms of the government granting you that. So it's just in itself, just because you formed and kept a corporation, that is a significant thing. If you achieve 501c3 status and on as an educational, yes, it's just applying every benefit that they get and everything they do, but you're going to get it now, and you can bring it to your students, or at least that's the hope, is that you could show if a common man or woman doesn't have property taxes and they have the knowledge. Okay.
Hold that thought. Class, you might have heard me say on this broadcast that I think I'm the most fortunate guy on the planet. Why? Because I'm surrounded by so many brilliant, bright, energetic, caring people. Robert Stewart is a perfect example of what I'm talking about. And so he's volunteering his time to teach us about nonprofit organizations and how it can benefit all of us. Robert, you're talking about not having to pay taxes. Please continue.
Yes, Vincent, there's lots of benefits to this model and this organization. You can look all of these up online. IRS.gov is a great resource. It's coming right from them. But there's lots of information out there as far as specifics. But yeah, taxes, that's one cost. Property taxes. So federal taxes would be a 501c3 designation, and then your local property taxes, if you're formed under a charity or a proper nonprofit, you don't have property taxes. So it is about these different legal environments you have to exist in. But if you're able to manage that, the state and the federal level, and then I'm sure it could be a mess in some ways, Vince. But again, it's about the people involved, and I keep going back to that. I was going to say, I think you wanted a picture, a kind of a visual of what I was thinking, and so during the break I looked at your area there, Vince, where you are. And let's say, just real quick, if you had a 400-acre rectangle and you cut a road through there, I know you don't like cutting trees, Vince. Let's say you did, though. And then you put these little off-roads, these little offshoots, and you had a 1-acre plot here, a 5-acre plot here, whatever the, 10 acres maybe. I'm not sure how big the plot would be for these farms. But, it's not economies of scale. We're not trying to produce. We're trying to destroy all costs associated, you could think of all your utilities. You could think of all the food you like. If you can get your food to 50% and then 75% and, things like that. But, yeah, that's the visual I have. It's just out there in the woods, and maybe there's a classroom in the corner somewhere that's, it could be the Finelli Hall or whatever, and, that's where people broadcast, and there's Skype, and there's, if someone does need a storm shelter or if you could take donations and you had the resources, you could provide a certain level of structure for them. But really, those plots, it would be them going out there and applying the knowledge and producing these little cells of enclosed operation where they were dealing all the way from their water to their waste and everything in between. And it was an enclosed system where if the economy shuts down, or if there is a grid failure, or if whatever happens, war with Russia, then if they wanted to, they could lock the gate and they could stay there. And that's the kind of the general idea. It's not an easy thing to achieve, obviously, but it would be that's what it is in my mind, Vince. And they would have to exist on that corporate land. It would be owned by whatever the name of it is. And they would live there. So as far as their ownership of the land, they would be given the land for free. They wouldn't own it. They would own it within the corporate structure, if that makes sense. So you could define stewardship, and you would define for them their rights within the corporate writings. So you could say, there's a lot of details there that are very specific, but you could give them so much opportunity where if they could basically live for free. I mean, if they could achieve, and then you ultimately what you do is you turn that, Vincent, like if there was a grid down, how people are a liability. Basically, what you do with this system is you flip that 180 degrees, where that community would be the most solid thing around. It would be the safest. It would have the most resources, the most trade within it. It would be more solid. So you actually create a strength next to you, or if you put it on the side of a city, or you place it somewhere else, you basically turn that around. That population threat, you spin it 180 degrees, where these cells are producing, they're not consuming, and so it would take a lot to get done, but you see the benefits where someone doesn't have to deal with property taxes. And you see the benefits of controlling a bad student. If someone gets in there, they pitch a tent, they start drinking beer and having bonfires, and, their friends come out and there's trash everywhere. Well, you can't stay. We'll give you 72 hours, and if you don't put a spade in the ground in 72 hours, you got to go. Or whatever the case may be. That's all a matter of, that goes into lots of detail that would be decided probably by mostly you and others that would be at a higher within the organization would decide that these are basically you just write the corporation, you just write what you want it to be, and if you don't want neck tattoos, Vincent, well then there's not going to be any neck tattoos. Just that simple. So the benefit of the control. the benefit of the control, too, is really nice, where you can get somebody out there, and if they're a good person and they want to do something, they want an extra acre, or they want to, they want to do something different, it's not necessarily in the curriculum, well, you don't want to stifle that. You want a good student to, take the curriculum farther and experiment and develop and, do it better than we're already doing it type thing. So there's lots of potential there, and I just think that you guys, with everything you do, Vince, with everything you've already done, that you can put it together with people like Rich and others near you, and I just think it would be so cool to see it take place in any form. Now, will it be successful? I don't know. But if you're offering people free land, if you say, hey, you can literally come here for free, well, it's a type of marketing. It's a type of value proposition, and you can then vet that candidate in a way where, hey, I'm giving you land. The sort of relationship there is you get to just exist on this, Missouri ground here, this lot, and you develop, you have a plan. Like I imagine in my head they would submit a plan based on the classes they either what they know or the classes they've taken through not USA Prepares, but basically let's call it that now. Whatever curriculum they had to do, and then they submit a plan, and Rich Shealy looks at it and says, your water's wrong, or a critique or whatever. Like it's that whole teacher, student, and then developing, like you say, developing people into leaders, where you might find people doing things that outstrip your understanding, Vince, and they're teaching you stuff, and you're like, wow, this is, that's what you really want to happen. You want them to go way past you, and you're like, okay, well, this is kind of, it's off on its own now. So that would be hopefully what you get out of those. I imagine young people with the right heart and the right mind. That's what I imagine. Maybe they have good parents, maybe they got support, and they're able to, do the homework and make it happen. And so, but then, you can give people a chance too, a true charity. You see, if an individual's on hard times and you want to give them an acre of land, so, and it depends on what they do with it, right? So, I don't know, Vince. It's a very interesting idea, and I know that you guys can put it together, and that's what got my interest, is like, I don't have the same connections. I don't have the same resources you do. I couldn't market on a national level this idea, and I couldn't have, like, local marketing, too. If you want to fill the Springfield or some other place, you could have a concentrated marketing campaign where you bring a certain, local people, like right here, you just move right here, and you can try this, but it's you get free stuff, you don't have to pay taxes, all these benefits, but, this, and this. If you have neck tattoos and you're an alcoholic and you're going to, burn down the forest, then we don't want you, but if you're going to do the right thing, then that's all it is. That's it. That's all you need. And then Rich Shealy teaches, and you teach, and Guineith teaches, and Dr. Miller, and I know that, you should just write down everything that Dr. Shealy says. Basically, is what what we should all be doing. If you could have him involved, Vince, that would be, it'd be amazing.
Yep, bring Stephen Heuer out here, and the list. The list is the faculty of USA Prepares, and Robert Stewart. I wanted to mention that as a teacher, the most rewarding thing to me is to watch the success of students who are passionate, who say, I want to do this, I want to make it happen, and they, through their own efforts and perseverance and the desire to actually achieve, and that is so rewarding to me. It really is, and that's why I do it. I don't get paid for this. I don't get paid for broadcasting. I've been a volunteer for over 7 years now. And I just love watching the success of the students. But there are very few of them. But that's okay, because the village that we're talking about won't be all that big. And I look at the foundations that are out there, and what actually do they do? Nothing compared to what we want to do. We literally are all volunteers. We're an all-volunteer organization. It's a loose organization. I'm sorry, what was that?
I was just saying the foundations is mostly money laundering. That's mostly what they do.
Yeah, and I was thinking about, the Kennedy Foundation, and they have the Easter egg hunt, once a year. And it's for the children. It's for the children. So we've got to maintain the property all year long, and it's so expensive. But it's worth it because we have the Easter egg hunt once a year. I mean, that kind of stuff, that kind of money laundering. I guess that's what you're talking about, right?
Well, the members of if you're a stock, in a traditional corporate structure, you'd be a stockholder, and so you would get benefits from that. Whether through taxes or there's all sorts of benefits just owning a stock. Well, there's not stockholders in a nonprofit. They're called members because you don't own stock for the purposes of profit. So you're not trying to, like I said, economies of scale, things like that. You're not trying to make money. You're trying to, in my economic understanding, you're trying to create value. Now, you might say, do those foundations create much value? Well, it's whatever you think they're doing, but that's really what a nonprofit would do, is it creates value as opposed to making money.
Mm-hmm. So, class, here's some thoughts. Instructor@usaprepares.com. If you're interested, send me an email. Instructor@usaprepares.com. We'll be right back. Class, what are we talking about? We're talking about teaching classes, an educational nonprofit. We're talking about a calamity shelter, independent water, independent power generation, a mechanic shop, herbal shop, gardening, greenhouses, cattle, sheep, goats, and fish, hemp production, CBD oil processing, growing it ourselves. We're talking about growing medicinal herbs. We're talking about internet sales and internet-based business. We're talking about our own educational not-for-profit, including dentistry and medicine. And our own fiber connection, and on and on and on, all at very low cost because we would be buying in bulk whatever we needed, and we would share the costs. And we would drive down to zero taxes. To zero. You're chuckling. Why are you chuckling?
Vincent, because we're just so much alike, and I'm just glad you're out there, man. Just keep it up, okay? Because you said everything. You said everything I've already thought, and that's exactly what it is. I thought of one word when you were saying it. It's the word robust, because that's what it would be. It would be strength, and it would be independence, and it would be security. In a way, it'd be production. It would be production diversified, right? Like you were talking about. Right. And if someone wants to grow hemp or they want to try something else, you don't want to stifle a good student. You don't want someone who is going to do a good job. You let them. And so it sounds wonderful, Vince. And it would take someone like you and Mrs. Finelli and your sons and everyone that you know to really, you have to be involved with it, especially initially. It would be an undertaking. But if you got it organized, man, it would be so cool. And if you could, like you say, buy for the corporation, I mean, you know how that works. A lot of people don't understand those basic principles, Vince. So this is a higher level from that, where you're dealing with nonprofit regulation and but the same sort of benefits. You limit your liability, right? And in this case, you don't pay taxes on income, property, payroll. You don't pay taxes on any of it. You get access to research and grant monies that nonprofits don't qualify for. You can't even apply. So you can apply for a $100,000 research grant on maybe that little process where they use fish to clean, that little bio, and you'll get it. I mean, if you qualify for it, they come out, they look at the site, they're like, yeah, it's the perfect place for it. They'll give you $100,000 to do that, but that's a corporate owned, right? I mean, you can't go spend that on what you want, Vince, but you can buy for the corporation. So, and then little things like better postage rates. So there's little things like that where you start looking into it. It's like you get better postage rates if you're a nonprofit, and maybe that doesn't matter, but if it's over the long term, it might really matter. Who knows? all very interesting stuff, Vince, and I'm glad that you had me on and we could talk about this. Very exciting for me.
Well, I was just thinking about something that happened yesterday. I met with a representative of a tire distribution company, one of the largest in the country. Well, as we were going through this discussion today, I was thinking, well, shoot, that we could be exempt from state and federal tire taxes and sales taxes on the tires that the corporation buys, because the corporation needs them for the educational classes that we're teaching, to show how to use the machinery to actually produce. Absolutely brilliant. This they're only I've gotten the cost down really low on our farm, really, really low. But there are two that I've been unable to eliminate so far. One is taxes. I'm talking about real estate taxes. That's a kind of a big number. And the other one is insurance. The other is insurance. Well, heck, we could take them to zero with just what you're talking about, literally to zero. We can say we don't need any insurance. We've got our own fire protection equipment. Well, not us, the corporation. It's got its own fire protection, and it's going to be better than what is surrounding us. It'll be the best. And we'll have our own people use it. You bet. Absolutely. Wow. Robert, Rich Sheben's going to be listening to this. I know he is. And he's going to be chomping at the bit, and he's going to be burning up the phone line. I know it. So, class, if you're interested, instructor@USA Prepares. Just send me an email, and we'll start talking about it more and more. Robert Stewart, thank you so much.